Everyone, welcome back to another video. And first thing I want to acknowledge is, yes, it's been a long time since I posted a video. I've had a lot going on for the past couple months, including getting some art projects such as this one together. And speaking of which, today's video we're going to be taking a look at this art doll that I made. It is based off the Moros Intrepidus creature, which appeared in the movie Jurassic World Dominion. Although I did take a lot of liberties with this design, and mainly because this is the first time I've ever done like an art doll type of type of model before. I've seen many videos on YouTube of like people making them, and it just looked like a really interesting process, and I really want to try my hand at it. And and I wanted to do this creature because I wanted to try a life-size model of it. And looking at the film and trying to find some size charts, it looked like a very tiny creature. Like, it looked like it's about duck size. So I believe this is scale accurate to both the real creature and the creature from the film. But yeah, so I wanted to try my hand at that. And so yeah, it's made out of obviously faux fur fabric. It has where there's no faux fur, there's rubber for like kind of like to make up like the skin pieces, and then there's like resin nails, resin teeth, resin eyes, and then like some kind of resin pieces underneath the jaw and the head, and then obviously a wired armature underneath to help it bend and stuff like that. And this video is just basically going to show you kind of the almost step-by-step process of how I put this together. So let's go ahead and get right to it. So first thing I do is sketch out a general design of how I want like the proportions and everything to be. That way I can kind of go off of that. And as you see, I just lightly sketched just like the general design. So that way when I made like the clay pieces, you know, like the skull and the head and the legs and everything like that, that I knew how big I should make them. Or just to give me a general idea, it can't come out exactly that way, but it still came out close enough. One thing I will say is that so throughout this video, you're probably gonna notice like for example, I did cut out some of the like certain steps, like the mold making, the casting, and even like when it came to the faux fur, like shedding it down or cutting it down. And that's just because this project had so many ups and downs when it came to making it. The molds they kept messing up so many times. Even the casting screwed me up a lot. And then just a lot of stuff happened within making this video, or within making this piece. So there's some parts of the process that got kind of cut out because I didn't feel like filming, because I had to redo, for example, the head like 3 different times. But speaking of the head, so I put just some plastilina clay underneath, and then I put epoxy sculpt on top just to kind of block out the shape. And then that way I put the clay the epoxy on top. That way then I could start putting in the little details, or like blocking out the specific details. And then once everything's kind of blocked out, then I could like put in the very fine details. And so on this original head, you'll probably see it, but like I did like to get kind of the pebbling texture going, I did sculpt out the individual little pebbles. But then when I eventually redid it, instead what I did is I actually got this little stamp detail texture that I made a long time ago. And where this, like, you know, kind of sketching out or drawing out the little pebbles took a long time, with that stamp it took like half that time. And not only that, it came out so much better. Like, the pebbles look more individual, and they look actually textured and 3-dimensional. And so if there's something that I would recommend is definitely, if you want to do like pebble texture, stuff like that, make yourself a little stamp, a little detail stamp, and that way you could just kind of do that. You could get your textures like that. But that process I did for basically all the pieces that I wanted to make molds of and cast out of rubber. So that included like the head, the legs, as you see I'm doing right here. I'm getting like the little, you know, again, just starting out with the blocking, then putting the clay on top, and then detailing it. And he even did that with the arms. And here I started to put stuff like I wanted to make resin eyes, because I wanted that kind of like glass eye effect. Even though I don't have glass eyes or plastic eyes that are like in proportion. I made my own with resin. It didn't come out perfectly, but again, you see here I just like made little, you know, shapes for the eyeballs. And then after that, what I do is I put Vaseline in between layers. So right here, I'm doing like what would be the resin skull, I'd call it. And when I do this, is in between layers, I put tons of Vaseline. That way, when I'm taking apart, it doesn't, the epoxy sculpt, since it's all the same material, it doesn't fuse together. And this way, you know, as you see what I'm getting right here, and, you know, I'm able to put stuff like the teeth and all that, and I'm able to put it just like inside the shape that I made for the outside, for the what would be the rubber skin. And that way, you know, nothing's out of proportion, nothing looks wonky, and so it all comes together perfectly without, but again, because it's the same clay, you gotta use some type of Vaseline or something that's gonna separate it. But here you can see I made templates for what would be the faux fur, so, you know, it kind of fits perfectly right there. And just again, all like, you know, this would be for like basically the majority of the body. I'd say 80% of the body would be faux fur. And speaking of which, I'm about to bring it out right here. You can see I bought like a whole bulk of it. I was able to get it for a really cheap price. It's actually very expensive, probably like $50 a yard. But if you can get it for really cheap, you know, definitely if you're trying to do art doll projects like this. But again, as you can see, I basically skipped the mold making and casting process. But as you can see, we're getting right to the kind of where I made the pieces, that I casted the pieces. And right here, I'm trying to paint the inside of the eyes, again, just to give it that sort of glass eye effect. And so I'm just layer by layer building it up so that it kind of looks like a naturalistic eye. And then I take my wire armature and I start to kind of build up the armature. Now the thing is, one mistake I made is I use this kind of armature used for like clay, and it's really good, but the problem is that it's very soft or malleable, I think. And so what happened was, now with like my Dinosaur, with the Moros Intrepidus, it actually can't stand on its own weight. I think had I used a much stronger armature, it would have been able to stand up on its own. But as you'll see in pictures, I've had to like kind of put it in a more like, you know, like kind of improper like, you know, stance, or even put a rock or something to prop it up so that it could kind of give off like the more realistic, quote unquote realistic look. So that kind of was, you know, a bit disappointing. But either way, after I make the armatures, and you can see right here, I think I was trying to show off the skull, but it didn't come up on frame. Apologize for that. But now once I got like the armatures put together, I start to kind of glue everything together, as far as like the rubber and the resin, everything. Like I got some stuff painted that I couldn't reach when everything's put together, so I painted those first, and then I glued everything together, and then I started to paint the rest of the pieces. Now I tried starting off with a pink, because I swear when I was looking at reference pictures, I saw like kind of a pink in between like the like sort of scales and whatnot. So I was trying to, you know, recreate that, but I think the pink just, it looks too contrasting. I think had I mixed it with like a tan or something, or just to give it, you know, just to kind of dull out the pink, it would have looked much more realistic, or much more natural. But then I went with like kind of dark colors. Again, I went with like, you know, I had to, like, I wanted to do a lot of dry brushing, because in my opinion, dry brushing really makes things look a lot more realistic, especially if you want to get gradients going on. And so I put like a base dark color where it needed to be, and a base tan where it needed to be, and from there I started to dry brush the opposing colors, again, just to kind of give that natural buildup and gradients of all kinds of dark browns, burnt siennas, tans, and even like for the Moros Intrepidus, it has like, you know, on the Jurassic World design, it has like some reds and oranges on its face going into its fur, and so I was trying to kind of replicate that. But again, taking my own kind of artistic liberties with it, since I don't, you know, this is my first time doing this type of project, and I also don't want to make it one for one, you know, just in case. But yeah, and again, you see here, like I'm trying to do gradients with grays, browns, dark siennas, or burnt siennas, and pinks and tans. Again, I think had I combined the pink and the tan together, or even just used more of a tan instead of a pink, it would, I think the gradients would have come off much more natural. Whereas instead, I think the final product looks a little weird looking. But if I were to make more, I think I would definitely use more of a tan, and either a slight pink or just cut out the pink color entirely for the base coat. I also think I would probably spray a Plastidip, either like the black or just like a clear see-through, just like as a primer, because I feel like that would help the paint stick onto it much better. Because I did have an issue of like the paint rubbing off, but there's kind of like the final kind of paint that I went with for the design. And then I basically varnish it so that the paint doesn't rub off, even though it does every once in a while. So that's where I think the Plastidip would help. And with this process, so as you see, or as you can't see, this wasn't a very good angle, but I'm sewing the pieces together. And I tried using a method called I believe a ladder stitch, and it's basically when it's all stitched together. The idea is you would not see a seam at all, and so that's what I was trying to go for. Now, because of the fur and it kind of sticking into some places, you do kind of see a seam because the fur kind of got stuck into some parts of when I was sewing it. But even so, when I did a good job at sewing it together, there really was no seam to see, so that was really good. And then I started gluing some separate fabrics to the rubber pieces, and I used I forgot what it's called, like tack glue or something like that. It's like fabric tack, but eventually to get it to really stick to the rubber, I eventually used super glue, which worked just fine. And here you can see me putting the armature in. And again, I'm trying to use the same process, fabric tack, or in this case E6000, I think E600. It didn't stick as well to the rubber for some reason, so that's why I eventually used super glue. But yeah, you can see I'm like stuffing the fabric parts just so that I could fill out. And this is basically the putting it together stage, if you couldn't already tell. You know, I'm just making sure everything fits together well. I also had to use the epoxy sculpt to kind of help, because I'm not the best at like kind of tying wires together. There's always a loose spot, and so to keep the legs and the arms from being too loose and wobbly, I put epoxy sculpt where kind of the joints meet. That way it gives it a tight, you know, a tightness to it. That way the joints aren't loose. And yeah, and that's basically kind of it put together. Here's what it looks like when I use my pet shaver. I did buy a pet shaver specifically to shave down the fur, and I think it came out pretty good. But I didn't just stop there. And obviously I put on the resin claws just to kind of finish it up, and I did paint the resin claws black and gave it a glossy varnish. But obviously I didn't just stop here with the gray fur. I did want it to have like kind of browns and reds, again kind of basing it off the kind of the creature design from the film. And you'll see right here, like right now, like I said, I'm just kind of putting the claws on, but here you see this is what kind of looks like mostly together. And then here's where I start to paint a bit of some gradients of like reds, like a red I don't know, like stripe going down like from the eyes. I used isopropyl alcohol, I believe, and I put it on a little towel, and I just kind of tried to wipe the paint down so that way it didn't get too, when it dried, it didn't get too clumpy. The fur did get a little like how do you say, like tough, like it, you know, it's not as flowy with the paint on, but it's still, with the isopropyl alcohol helps it kind of go down. But there it is, kind of fully mostly painted. So let's go ahead and take a look at some pictures that I took of it. Okay, so one thing I did want to mention that I didn't get a chance was that I did use an airbrush. However, with me being a novice, I had some issues with the airbrush. I actually had to get two different ones. I did get cheap ones, so that could be the issue, but I think it also could be just maybe the airflow wasn't right. I'm still trying to figure things out, but hopefully on another project I can use it again and use it better. But with that being said, that's about the end of the video. yeah, I think overall, this project was a real pain in the butt to kind of get done, but when it's all said and done, I think it came out great. I actually took it to a nearby convention, I believe Anime Matsuri in Houston, and I decided to take it there, and a lot of people seemed to really dig it. A lot of people even thought it was like for some reason they thought it was like a Chihuahua or something like that. They said, "Oh, I thought it was a real for a second." You know, some people thought, "Oh, I thought you were carrying a dog," and so I think that's I'll take that as actually a really good compliment. But yeah, I do have plans now because I want to work on other stuff and I have other stuff I want to try and do. I don't know when I'll get to this, but I do want to make a few of them, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and try and sell those. So if you want to keep in touch, I would say follow my Instagram page, Giovanni Arts and Collectibles. Yeah, you can, whenever I post pictures about selling them, and you can DM me, and maybe we can, I'll try and see if I could get some prices together, and we'll see what's going on. But that's the plan for right now. Again, I don't have an exact time on when I'm thinking about selling them, because again, these take a long time to make. But I do plan on making a few. And if you are interested in buying, again, just follow my Instagram, Giovanni Arts Collectibles. Keep track of like when I make some, and again, just give me a message if you're interested whenever I put them up. But yeah, that about does it for the video. I appreciate y'all for watching. Definitely keep up for I have some more stuff coming out, so I'll see you then, and have a great day.